One of my favorite things in elementary music is using elementary music centers. Using centers in your elementary music class will change your life, not being dramatic, because it makes sure that the kids are engaged, the kids are taking ownership of their own learning. It's a little bit easier for you, like in the active teaching way. It helps break up the pace. There's a lot of really great things about it, but that's not what we're talking about in this video. In this video, we're going to talk about what happens before you start centers, because if you are wanting to get started, that can feel super intimidating because you're like, oh my gosh, there's so many things that I need to know. So in this video, we're going to talk about all the things that you need to know before you get started with your elementary music centers. After this video, you'll be like, I know exactly what to do. I'm ready, or at least I have a handle and a checklist of what I need to do. Now, before we get started, I do want to mention that I have a huge freebie for you that I will link down in the description. It's like the ultimate music centers idea list. It is 12 pages long, I think, with a whole bunch of different ideas of things that you can do in centers, a lot of which take like hardly any prep. And it has links to videos and like all the and blog posts and different things to help you out. And it's all separated by concept. So there's like rhythm centers, solfege centers, treble clef centers, instruments, the orchestra centers, like all the things to make your life so easy. So I will link that down below in the description. I will also link our centers playlist so you can get all the extra information, and let's get started. All right, so before you start your centers, you need to do some thinking and some deciding, specifically decide on your routine. So how many centers are you going to have? Which way are the students going to move around the room? How are they going to move around the room? How many students are you going to have at each center? When are you going to switch? How are you going to rotate? All of those things are things you need to think through. Now, the good news is there's not really like a right and wrong way to do them. It's just that you need to decide. So this isn't like you choose and you're stuck with this forever. It's like you choose, you see if it works, and then you adjust, and then we go from there. So I'm going to share a couple of things that I use for my centers just to help you out. You do not have to do this, but it, you know, in case you need a little bit of a starting point, here's my answers. So how many centers? I do 3 different activities, but I do 6 centers. So I do 2 of everything because I like to keep the numbers smaller, but I just find in my classroom, 3 is all we can realistically get to without being stressed, and I don't want to be stressed. So we do 6 centers, but 3 activities, and I just have them like this. So it's like, these are doing the same thing, these are doing the same thing, these are doing the same thing. What students do at each center is going to change throughout. However, I already know a couple of things. So one of my centers is going to be a teacher group. Actually, to make it more complicated, these 2 come to the same place because that's not confusing at all. But they come to the teacher group, and so I know I'm going to have a teacher group. I often also have a worksheet group with something that they can turn in, whether that's a composition, whether that's like a true worksheet. But I like to have something they can turn in so that 1, I'm making sure they're paying attention and doing work, and 2, I have an extra grade for them for the day. And then typically the 3rd is a center. That's not a set in stone like we do every single day, but that's kind of an idea of what I would like to do, and that's kind of my starting point. I can change it, but that's where I start. How many minutes the kids have at each center? I find 6 minutes is perfect. I set a timer on the board for 6 minutes, and at the end of 6 minutes, the timer goes off. I say 1, 2, 3, 4, put everything down, get off the floor and freeze. And then we hit a 1-minute timer. The 1-minute timer means you have 1 minute to clean everything up, stand up, and freeze. Now, once everyone's frozen, then we go to move around the room, and then they have 6 minutes of that station. It's just what works best for me. I don't know how long your classes are or anything like that, but that's what works for me. So that's what we do. Oh, when it's time to rotate, what I do is I show them where they're going. So I say point up at the sky, and then I'll say, okay, red group, point to the yellow group, point to the carpet, like whatever. And then once everyone's pointing to where they're gonna go, then I say 5, 6, 7, 8, hurry, don't be late. They go to their new station, they get down to work immediately. I hit the timer, we got 6 minutes. So that's how I like to rotate. You do not have to do that, but that's what has been working for me. And then as far as cleaning up, because that's another thing you need to think about, same thing. Stand up and freeze. Once everything's cleaned, I get everyone back to their seats, and then I'll call on a few students to help me pick the things up, which should be like in their boxes all cleaned anyway. So you just take the whole box, put it on the bookshelf. So that's a couple of things that help me with my routines. You need to come up with your routines, which do not have to be the same as mine, but you know, just think, how long are they gonna have? Well, how many centers are we going to do? How many kids should be to every center? What are we gonna do? All of those things you need to have an answer for. It doesn't have to be the perfect answer, but an answer for. Next up is, before you do centers, you want to do all of the activities. So the worst thing you can do is have a really complicated new game that the kids have never seen before in a center, because what's gonna happen is 2 seconds in, you're gonna have 75 children in your face being like, I don't know what to do. So how I fix this is we practice all of the activities before we start, unless it's something like very simple, like if it's a worksheet, we can probably handle a worksheet. But anything more complicated than that, we do in a class before centers. So I'll take like the last, 5 or 10 minutes of class one day, we'll play the game, and then we'll play that same game in centers. That way when we get to centers, they already know what to do. Now you can change it a little bit, you can change the concept. So like once they know how to play Go Fish for quarter and eighth note, they can play Go Fish with half note because it's the same game. They already know how to play, but it just makes it so that there's not a lot of new things. After our first week, I only add one new thing every time. If I'm gonna do one new center, then the other centers are things we have done before to make life nice and easy so that we're not super stressed out. So make sure the kids have done the activity so that they know what to do and they're not coming and having to ask you. Before you do centers, you also want to create your groups ahead of time. This is super important because I have been there and done that when you have the whole class staring at you and you're like, you go there, you go there, and it's not fun. It's not fun, trust me. So before they come, write down a very simplistic who's going to be in what group so that you know where people are going. I like to differentiate my groups, so I do this based off of some activity that we've done before. I'll go through their scores and kind of sort them between like students who need a lot of help, students who need a little bit of help, students who've got it. And then I sort those into the correct number of centers. And there we have, and then I, adjust anybody who doesn't need to be with somebody else. And there we have centers. If you don't want to do it that way, you can totally just be like, okay, center 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, great. Center 2, 2, 2, 2. Like you can go down the row of their seating chart and figure it out that way too. Totally fine. However you want to do it is fine. Just have an idea before they get there because it's going to save a lot of time to just be like, go, 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 go. Now, on the actual day of, before the kids go to their centers, make sure that you explain your expectations very explicitly. So we have music room expectations, of course, but we also have specific ones to centers. So we have 4. Those 4 are, and I have them repeat and we do the action. So we do work the whole time. Be respectful to your group. Do not leave your group. Voices on level 2. Okay, so those are our 4 different things that we remember. We talk about them before. We talk about what each one means, especially the first time. We talk about how if you're not doing those things, you will have a yellow card, you will sit out. I always keep packets of work so that if kids are not being respectful in particular, that I can be like, here's a packet, go sit in the corner, bye. I like make a really big deal about making sure you're respectful to the people you are in your group with. So I also tell them that this earns them extra points today. So at the end of class, I'll go back through those 4 things and I'll be like, okay, were people working the whole time? Were people leaving their group? Like all those things. And kids are honest. And they will tell you like, that person was walking all around. And so I tell them you get 2 points if like the whole class was on it and 1 point if like we were mostly okay. So that's kind of my gauge of that, and having the extra points really helps because we do teacher versus student points. I'll link something down below that talks about that. If you have those things done before you start music centers, then your first day of centers is going to go maybe not smoothly, but at least a little bit less rocky. Having these things in place just really helps it so that you have thought through what you need to do, the kids know what to do, and you know what's going to happen if they, don't do the things they're supposed to do. This is really going to help you to get started on the right foot and make sure that centers is an enjoyable experience you would actually enjoy and want to do so that you're ready to go. I'll leave a link to the blog post that goes along with this down below, as well as the free centers thing that I talked about. And so you can check the links down below for all of those things. And that's all I got. So thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.